much. Excellencies and distinguished guests, good morning, sabah al-khair, wa salam alaikum. And sorry for my poor pronunciation, but I'm trying. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you to the authorities of UAE for hosting us in this beautiful city. And of course, a thank you to DSA for inviting me here once again to one of these DSA summits, which are always really important for all of us as stakeholders. For me, it's very much about learning from all of you so that I can bring back a lot of the latest thinking and innovations to my team and my colleagues in the UK government. And it's also very much about sharing. So Marta Suarez, the president of the DSA, asked me to share with you today a bit of an overview of how we work as UK government to support our partner countries around the world to achieve what we call digital development. And you will see, hopefully I'll manage to convey that, to the importance of spectrum within that, in particular for last mile connectivity. So that's the kind of sense of my presentation. Very difficult acts to follow, I have to say, so I'm a little bit nervous. Great, so let me just try to go to the next one. I guess it should be this one. Oh, it works. Fabulous. So some of you might be familiar with this, but just for kind of, bring everybody to the same page. The way that we define digital development in FCDO and in our work internationally is to support our partner countries to achieve a digital transformation that is more inclusive, that is more responsible, and also that is more sustainable. I hope that rings a bell. But then why do we actually care about doing all of that? Why digital development? So it's quite complex. There's various drivers for that. And I normally like to organize my thinking about that on these kind of 4 levels that you see on the slides. So obviously the world has become more and more interconnected and interdependent thanks to digital technologies. And this has been accelerated also in the past few years with the advent of generative AI. But then also it's important to think about digital technologies broadly as key enablers of social and economic development. This is now widely recognized, and the UN has stated a couple of years ago that over 70% of the targets for the Sustainable Development Goals are directly enabled by digital technologies. So really, really important. But we also have to face certain challenges. As you all know, there is quite a deep digital divide that still affects the world. We are hearing about all these wonderful innovations in spectrum, in digital technologies, in connectivity solutions. But then actually we still have 2.6 billion people still offline in the world. And this is an official statistic of the ITU, as you know. There's also a gender digital gap in that, with women being also left behind even more than men comparatively. And then the complex risks that we actually have to address and manage when we participate in the digital world. Anything from cybersecurity harms or threats, from concerns about online safety, especially for the most vulnerable groups. And with the advent of AI also, of course, other particular risks that have been amplified and accelerated, like misinformation, disinformation, the algorithm bias, and so forth. Last but not least, also thinking about the environmental cost of digitalization, which has been alluded to by at least a couple of the previous speakers. And this, again, with AI data centers, the kind of need for energy, it's really something that we need to think about. So always keeping in mind that the sort of benefits of digital technologies, but also the risks that we have to manage is really at the basis of our approach and our work with our partner countries around the world. And so I'll give you a little bit of a flavor of our policy framework that informs that, and then I'll talk about the strategy. So in this kind of colorful flower, you can see kind of a visual summary of our approach to what we call digital development. It's about digital transformation meant in a very broad sense, transformation of the economy, of course, but also of government and of society. But then we don't just really want to promote digital transformation per se, just for the sake of it, because it's about development. Then we really want it to be inclusive, and so we work on digital inclusion, focusing, as you can imagine, primarily on ensuring that there is last mile connectivity that is both affordable and sustainable, with a very strong emphasis on the underserved communities and sort of excluded and marginalized groups. But this obviously also is complemented by the role of digital skills and accessibility of digital content and services, and that kind of is supposed to be making digital transformation more inclusive, but then we want it also to be responsible, which means really building the trust and resilience of the digital ecosystem by strengthening cybersecurity capacity, online safety, data protection, and the like. And as I said, also dealing with the more kind of emerging and developing AI risks. And then last but not least, again, digital sustainability, thinking about both the positive and the negative side of the coin. On the sort of more problematic side, how can we promote models, including in connectivity, that have a lower environmental cost, but also on the positive side, how can we leverage digital technologies and tools and solutions that can support our partner countries and communities around the world to deal with, sort of to address, let's say, climate change adaptation and resilience. And all of this is encapsulated in our digital development strategy that my team and I wrote and published last year. It's a governance strategy, so you can find it on the gov.uk website. If you're not familiar with it, please scan the QR code. You're probably thinking, oh, governance strategy is going to be a really boring, very dry document. Normally they are, but we've included about 15 different case studies with really practical examples of how in the past 10 years or so, we've been testing different models, different ways of working in partnership with countries around the world, in particular developing and emerging countries, what works, what doesn't work, and how this has then informed our vision for the near future. So please have a look at it if you can. Just very briefly, as you can imagine, the strategy is articulated across the 4 pillars that I explained a couple of minutes ago. So these are just the strap lines of digital transformation, inclusion, responsibility, and sustainability. Won't read through just in the interest of time. But I want to linger just a few seconds on the top priorities and deliverables of the Digital Development Strategy, or DDS. As you can see, there are kind of 4 quite big, chunky commitments, but the top one, and that's really important, I guess, for the conversations that we're having these couple of days, is last mile connectivity. We are thinking about, the advance of AI, we are thinking about the importance of digital public infrastructure and new solutions for that, but ultimately, without connectivity, we cannot really work on any of those objectives. So we've committed to to support and work with others with a multi-stakeholder approach, the halving of the connectivity gap in 20 countries around the world by 2030. We've already done this in over 5 countries, and some of the countries around the region we are making progress, so we are on track for that target. But then how does this really work in practice? You're probably wondering, there's a lot of really nice thinking and sort of, strategies and theory, but what do we do practically? So we have quite a broad portfolio of programs that focus on digital development, but many of them are basically about leveraging digital technologies and solutions for particular verticals or sectors of development. You can imagine, digital for health or digital for education, digital for financial inclusion, you name it. But over the years, we've learned that we cannot just really focus only on the individual use cases. We really need to look at the process of digital transformation in a very broad, very cross-cutting, and very sort of holistic way. This is why we developed a portfolio of programs. The 3 top ones are the ones that you see on the slide. I'll talk about the Digital Access Program a bit more in detail in a minute, because it's also the program through which we collaborate with DSA and put a lot of emphasis on the importance of spectrum. But just to give you a couple of more examples, the work with the Digital Impact Alliance that we co-established with a number of other institutional donors and international stakeholders is the platform through which we promote the principles of digital development. If you're not familiar with them, just have a look online. They are endorsed by over 300 organizations around the world, and they give a number of sort of voluntary principles on how to promote digital transformation in a way that is really developmental and inclusive. And with the World Bank, we work on digital identity for development. This is now being broadened to this sort of wider set of what people call DPI, or digital public infrastructure. Many of you might be familiar with the definition, but just for clarity, this is the set of tools and solution, or the sort of virtual architecture that you need for doing things like digital payments, digital ID, data sharing. You can imagine really important, especially with the evolution of digital transformation and AI that we see recently. So that gives you maybe a flavor of the things that we work on and why ultimately connectivity is really at the basis of all of that. Bit of a map, just maybe for curiosity, where do we work, in which countries? That list of 20 countries is just a kind of top ones in terms of the critical mass of the work that we do with stakeholders locally and globally. But then from those countries, we've also expanded more regionally. So we are hoping to share our insights and the sort of experience that we have in those focal countries with other geographies as well. And then I'm going to start talking a little bit about the Digital Access Program. That is a bit of the highlight of the portfolio. So we call it internally just an AppStack, just for fun. And we see that connectivity is at the basis of everything. That's why I just gave it a nice bright color. But then connectivity is there as the foundational element of digital transformation for everybody. It needs to be also augmented by other elements. So we sort of work on digital skills development, on access to digital content and services. We manage the risks by promoting cyber hygiene awareness of the users, but also building the cybersecurity capacity of government and industry. We promote, of course, online safety on the both user and platform side, and deal also with data protection approaches and sharing frameworks with our partner countries. This enables a more thriving local digital economy in our partner countries, promoting tech entrepreneurship and creating skilled jobs in the digital economy, or what we call digital employability. And ultimately, hopefully, the whole of that stack really allows people and communities to have a voice in the digital world and participate more democratically and more inclusively in the digital world. So the program is articulated, so the Digital Access Program in this case is articulated in 3 pillars, and it's in the countries that you see listed there in their respective regions. Of the 3 pillars, I'm just going to linger on the first one, pillar 1, which is also the lead component of the program. This is the one through which we work on connectivity, and we've done this for about 6 years now, starting from those focal countries that you see listed. And we've learned a lot about different models and what works and doesn't work. And we've also complemented, obviously, the connectivity work with the digital skills, access to content and services, etc. So really the definition of digital inclusion that I gave you earlier. Just to be a bit sort of practical, of just illustrating very briefly, we work both at systems and market and community levels, so on 2 main levels, and the 2 feed off each other in a way. So systemic level, we've been working with partner countries to really support them to develop their own strategies and plans, for instance, for national, broadband plans, digital economy plans. And in the list, I mean, the list is in no order of importance. There are really important elements of working systemically by supporting our partner countries to make their own well-informed choices on policy, regulations, licensing, and other forms of the kind of systemic framework. We sort of broaden the impact across the country, and you can see there in the list also, of course, the importance of looking at spectrum management approaches, of course. And then at market and community level, just a few pictures just to give you a flavor, going counterclockwise, work on digital skills development, cyber hygiene awareness, working on specific sectors of development, like in this case, telemedicine and citizenship, digital journalism. And then last but not least, I really love that picture with the bamboo tower. I think we've got colleagues from Indonesia, from the Telkom University in Bandung, and I think colleagues from Comdigi, that will recognize that. This is one of the models that we've developed with our local partners and also with the Association of Progressive Communication to look at how communities can actually build their own infrastructure using local materials, in this case bamboo, could be other sustainable local materials. That's just the structure, but obviously they can use any technology that works at the local level to then effectively broadcast the connectivity at the local level. They sell the services at a very low affordable price point, and they reinvest the revenue to maintain that local infrastructure. Interestingly, that is just for provisional connectivity. Usually can also double up for other functions. This particular tower, that I was actually in that village where we opened up that process, it also has a connection through IoT with local sensors that collect data for environmental impact and climate change that actually the local government in Indonesia always needs to then share with the central government for their own environment development and climate change planning. So this is about supporting local communities to have their own connectivity, but also help with the sort of more systemic work of development planning. You would be wondering, okay, what about all of this? What are the outcomes or the sort of results? So far, at the last evaluation that we had in June 25, we found that we've reached directly and impacted in a sustainable way on the digital inclusion of 18.6 million people across 5 countries and the regions. And this is on over 8,000 communities. And maybe the interesting data there for you working a lot on the connectivity side is that helped to basically reduce by over 35% in average the connectivity gap in those countries. So we are kind of quite happy about that. We've demonstrated a number of models of digital inclusion and supported over 50 policy and regulatory frameworks improvements, and then of course including work on spectrum, as you can imagine. How did we do that in terms of delivery model? Maybe one interesting feature of this program is that it's not really the typical large-scale government program where you take all the funding, give it to one organization, and just sort of get on with it. We've worked really hard over the years to combine our in-house expertise with external expertise of a very wide range of organizations, both locally and globally. And also from the UK side, we benefit from the insights of the rest of the kind of our government, and also with whenever there is, for example, a request from a local telecom regulator in our partner country to learn a little bit and share insights with the UK experience. We also turn to Ofcom. You'll hear from Chris later on, so I'm not going to say anything about Ofcom, but they're really great partners for us in terms of learning from them and their insights and what can be useful to exchange in the interest of peer learning between the UK and other countries. And then importantly, amongst the global partners of the Digital Access Program that you see listed there, DSA is a really top partner for us, and the Digital Access Program has become like a platform for DSA to work together with the ITU and with the Association for Progressive Communications on last mile connectivity, a lot of emphasis on community networks, on, well, I'll say a little bit more about that in the last couple of slides, so I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but certainly working across these kind of international, both sort of civil society, international organizations, and the industry represented by DSA in this case is really important to the multi-stakeholder approach. And so yes, I am to my now finally at my last couple of slides to sort of recap from our perspective. What you see there on the slide is probably quite a given for you, but I can assure you if you work in government, you're going to your ministers asking for resources to work very specifically on, improving a spectrum management approach or looking for the next innovation in spectrum sharing. They very rarely understand why that is important, because obviously they're not specialists of the subject. So it's really important for just people like me to be able to frame the importance of spectrum by connecting it very clearly with the reduction of the connectivity gap and with the sort of improvement and increase in digital inclusion. So that strategic framing of spectrum, and in particular dynamic approaches to spectrum sharing, is really what helps me and my team and my colleagues to make the case basically to work on this area together. And practically the way that we've been doing this with DSA is through this specific project on spectrum approaches that is part, as I said, of the broader Digital Access Program. And there are a number of strategies and sort of activities that we've co-designed together that have been implemented by DSA and the local partners and ourselves in the 5 focal countries, and sharing these insights with further countries in the regions. So from having a very robust analysis of the economic case for spectrum, for shared spectrum, to looking at the latest innovations in shared spectrum management, looking at how we can enhance the relevant regulatory frameworks, wherever there is a sort of a demand for that, or a kind of a request for that, of course, providing technical assistance and advice to telecom regulators and spectrum agencies. By all of this, creating a more conducive business environment for the sort of supply side, by creating that sort of thriving market for small-scale ISPs and WISPs and others who can really work pushing the market frontier, pushing the sort of the frontier towards the last mile of connectivity, and finally also promoting specifically the work of community networks through capacity building and access to sustainable finance for them. And I think there will be maybe some questions later, but I just want to say again, thank you so much for listening. To keep in touch, I really look forward to interacting with all of you and sort of exchange more and learn from all of you in these couple of days. Keep in touch, and if you want to read the strategy, that's the QR code there. Again, thank you so much. Shukran jazilan.